"He has a beer sometimes," said Tiffany. "What's that got to do with anything?" "Only beer." "Well, I'm not supposed to know about what my father calls the special sheep liniment," said Tiffany. "Granny Aiken used to make it in the old cow shed." "Strong stuff, is it?" "It dissolves spoons," said Tiffany. "It's for special occasions. Father says it's not for women because it puts hairs on your chest." "And if you want to be sure of finding the Macfeagles, go and fetch some," said the toad. "It will work, believe me." 5 minutes later, Tiffany was ready. Few things are hidden from a quiet child with good eyesight, and she knew where the bottles were stored, and she had one now. The cork was hammered in over a piece of rag, but it was old, and she was able to lever it out with the tip of a knife. The fumes made her eyes water. She went to pour some of the golden brown liquid into a saucer. "No, we'll be trampled to death if you do that," said the toad. "Just leave the cork off." Fumes rose from the top of the bottle, wavering like the air over rocks on a hot day. She felt it, a sensation in the dim, cool room of riveted attention. She sat down on a milking stool and said, "All right, you can come out now." There were hundreds. They rose up from behind buckets. They lowered themselves on string from the ceiling beams. They sidled sheepishly from behind the cheese racks. They crept out from under the sink. They came out of places where you'd think a man with hair like an orange gone nova couldn't possibly hide. They were all about 6 inches tall and mostly coloured blue, although it was hard to know if that was the actual colour of their skins or just the dye from their tattoos, which covered every inch that wasn't covered with red hair. They wore short kilts, and some wore other bits of clothing too, like skinny waistcoats. A few of them wore rabbit or rat skulls on their heads as a sort of helmet, and every single one of them carried slung across his back a sword nearly as big as he was. However, what Tiffany noticed more than anything else was that they were scared of her. Mostly they were looking at their own feet, which was no errand for the faint-hearted, because their feet were large, dirty, and half tied up with animal skins to make very bad shoes. None of them wanted to look her in the eye. "You were the people who filled the water bucket," she said. There was a lot of foot shuffling and coughing, a chorus of "ayes," "and the wood box." There were more "ayes." Tiffany glared at them. "And what about the sheep?" This time they all looked down. "Why did you steal the sheep?" There was a lot of muttering and nudging, and then one of the tiny men removed his rabbit skull helmet and twiddled it nervously in his hands. "We was hungering, mistress," he muttered, "but when we kenned it was thine, we did put the beastie back in the fold." They looked so crestfallen that Tiffany took pity on them. "I expect you wouldn't have stolen it if you weren't so hungry then," she said. There were several hundred astonished looks. "Oh, we would, mistress," said the Helmet Twiddler. "You would?" Tiffany sounded so surprised that the Twiddler looked around at his colleagues for support. They all nodded. "Yes, mistress, we have to. We are famously stealing folk, aren't we, lads? What's it we're famous for?" "Stealing," shouted the blue men. "And what else, lads?" "Fighting." "And what else?"
"Drinking."
"And what else?" There was a certain amount of thought about this, but they all reached the same conclusion.
"Drinking and fighting."
"And there was something else," muttered the Twiddler. "Ah, yes, tell the hags, lads."
"Stealing and drinking and fighting," shouted the blue men cheerfully.
"Tell the wee hag who we are, lads," said the Helmet Twiddler. There was a scrape of many small swords being drawn and thrust into the air.
"Nac Mac Feegle, the wee free men, nae king, nae queen, nae laird, nae master, we willna be fooled again."
Tiffany stared at them. They were all watching her to see what she was going to do next, and the longer she said nothing, the more worried they became. They lowered their swords, looking embarrassed. "But we wouldn't dare deny a powerful hag, except maybe for a strong drink," said the Twiddler, his helmet spinning desperately in his hands, and his eyes on the bottle of special sheep liniment. "Will you no help us?" "Help you?" said Tiffany. "I want you to help me. Someone has taken my brother in broad daylight." "Oh, waily, waily, waily," said the Helmet Twiddler. "She's come then, she's come a-fetching. We're too late, it's the Queen." "There was only one of them," said Tiffany. They mean the Queen, said the Toad. The Queen of the... Hush your gob, shouted the Helmet Twiddler. But his voice was lost in the wails and groans of the Knack-Mack-Feagles. They were pulling at their hair and stamping on the ground and shouting, Hark-a-day, and Whaley, Whaley, Whaley. And the Toad was arguing with the Helmet Twiddler, and everyone was getting louder to make themselves heard. Tiffany stood up. Everybody, shut up right now, she said. Silence fell, except for a few sniffs and faint wailings from the back. We was only dreeing our weird, mistress, said the Helmet Twiddler, almost crouching in fear. But not in here, snapped Tiffany, shaking with anger. This is a dairy. I have to keep it clean. Dreeing your weird means facing your fate, said the Toad. 'Cause if the Queen is here, that means our calder is weakening fast, said the Helmet Twiddler, and we'll have no one to look after us. To look after us, thought Tiffany. Hundreds of tough little men who could each win the worst broken nose contest need someone to look after them. She took a deep breath. My mother's in the house crying, she said, and I don't know how to comfort her, she added to herself. I'm no good at this sort of thing. I never know what I should be saying out loud, she said, and she wants him back. A lot, she added, hating to say it. He's her favourite. She pointed to the Helmet Twiddler, who backed away. First of all, she said, I can't keep thinking of you as the Helmet Twiddler, so what is your name? A gasp went up from the Knack-Mack-Feagles, and Tiffany heard one of them murmur, Aye, she's the hag, sure enough. That's a hag's question. The Helmet Twiddler looked around at them as if seeking help. We didn't give you your names, he muttered. But another Feagle, somewhere safe at the back, said, Wheest, you can't refuse a hag. The little man looked up very worried. I'm the big man of the clan, mistress, he said, and my name it is... He swallowed. Rob anybody Feagle, mistress, but I beg ye not to use it agin me. The Toad was ready for this. They think names have magic in them, he murmured. They don't tell them to people in case they're written down. Aye, and put upon complicated documents, said a Feagle. Then summonses and such things, said another. Or wanted posters, said another. Aye, and bills and affidavits, said another. Writs of distrainment even. The Feagles looked around in panic at the very thought of written down things. They think written words are even more powerful, whispered the Toad. They think all writing is magic. Words worry them. See the swords? They glow blue in the presence of lawyers. All right, said Tiffany. We're getting somewhere. I promise not to write his name down. Now, tell me about this Queen who's taken Wentworth. Queen of what? Can I say it aloud, mistress? Said Rob. Anybody? She hears her name wherever it's said, and she comes calling. Actually, that's true, said the Toad. You do not want to meet her, ever. She's bad? Worse. Just call her the Queen. Aye, the Queen, said Rob Anybody. He looked at Tiffany with bright, worried eyes. You didn't ken of the Queen. And you the ween of Granny Aiken, who had these hills in her bones. You didn't ken the ways. She did not show you the ways. Ye know a hag. How can this be? You slabbered Jenny Greenteeth and stared the heedless horseman in the eyes he hasn't got, and you didn't ken. Tiffany gave him a brittle smile, and then whispered to the Toad, Who's Ken? And what about his dinner? And what's a ween of Granny Aiken? As far as I can make out, said the Toad, they're amazed that you don't know about the Queen and the magical ways, what with you being a child of Granny Aiken and standing up to the monsters. Ken means no. And his dinner? Forget about his dinner for now, said the Toad. They thought Granny Aiken told you her magic. Hold me up to your ear, will you? Tiffany did so, and the Toad whispered, Best not to disappoint them, eh? She swallowed. But she never told me about any magic, she began, and stopped. It was true. Granny Aiken hadn't told her about any magic, but she showed people magic every day. There was a time when the Baron's champion hound was caught killing sheep. It was a hunting dog, after all, but it had got out onto the downs, and because sheep run, it had chased. The Baron knew the penalty for sheep worrying. There were laws on the chalk so old that no one remembered who made them, and everyone knew this one. Sheep-killing dogs were killed. But this dog was worth $500 gold, and so, the story went, the Baron sent his servant up onto the downs to Granny's hut on wheels. She was sitting on the step, smoking her pipe, and watching the flocks. The man rode up on his horse, didn't bother to dismount. That was not a good thing to do if you wanted Granny Aching to be your friend. Iron-shod hooves cut the turf. She didn't like that. He said, "The Baron commands that you find a way to save his dog, Mistress Aching. In return, he will give you 100 silver dollars." Granny had smiled at the horizon, puffed at her pipe for a while, and replied, "A man who takes arms against his lord, that man is hanged. A starving man who steals his lord's sheep, that man is hanged. A dog that kills sheep, that dog is put to death. Those laws are on these hills, and these hills are in my bones. What is a baron that the law be break for him?"